Comparing your AFL club to a Premier League club. Adelaide, I've compared them to Nottingham Forest. Both young teams building in the right direction with phenomenal fan bases. I compared the Brisbane Lions to Newcastle United. Over 5 years ago, both Brisbane and Newcastle were struggling in their respective leagues. And for the last few years, both teams have now become the powerhouses of their respective league. Newcastle making top 4 last year, Brisbane in the grand final this year. What more do you want? It's the perfect match. I've compared Carlton to Arsenal. Carlton, probably the third biggest club supporter-wise. Arsenal, also the third biggest club supporter-wise. Both have phenomenal rich histories, and perfectly, both are sleeping giants who have only recently turned into great teams. Arsenal struggling for so long since Thierry Henry left, and Carlton struggling for, 20-30 years, but now both look primed to win the title. Collingwood, I've compared you to Manchester United. Both the biggest club in their respective leagues, and the most successful, and generally speaking, both clubs are always at the top. Essendon, I've compared you with Tottenham Hotspur. Both have been failure of the club for so long. Essendon haven't won a final for 7,000 days, over 7,000 days. And Tottenham, well, Tottenham are just Tottenham. Both rely on their history to prove that their club is big, but in reality, their fans both know they'll never get there again. Fremantle, I've compared with Bournemouth. Both are relevant clubs, get them out. Geelong, I've compared with Manchester City. Not quite the richest histories, but for the last 10 plus years, both have been probably the best teams in the comp. Geelong since 07 winning 4 flags, and City since 012 winning, I don't even know how many prems. GWS, I've compared them to Brentford. Brentford, new to the Premier League, relatively speaking. GWS, the newest team to the AFL. Both teams are quite liked in their respective leagues, and both teams have a great style of play with young players. Gold Coast, I've compared them to Luton Town. Luton Town, what are you doing in the Premier League? Gold Coast, what are you doing in the AFL? Hawthorn, I've compared to Chelsea. Both have similar fan bases. Hawthorn top 5, Chelsea top 5. For quite a period of time recently, Hawthorn and Chelsea were both great teams, and for the last 2-3 years, now both teams suck. Hawthorn scraping past the wooden spoon, Chelsea finishing mid-table even lower than 10th. Melbourne, I've compared them to Aston Villa. Aston Villa and Melbourne have amazingly rich histories. However, in recent history, both have struggled very much. Aston Villa dropping out the Premier League, Melbourne accused of tanking, but for the last 3-4 years, Aston Villa have turned into what is currently title contenders, and Melbourne winning the flag and is still up there. North Melbourne, I've compared you to Burnley. Every now and then, Burnley and North Melbourne make a push for top 4, but the reality is they're usually shit. Port Adelaide, I've compared you to West Ham. Both clubs have phenomenal fan bases who are crazy passionate about their club. They also both had very rich histories. Port Adelaide in the SANFL, the best team for so long, and West Ham, the big hammers. The Irons have been big for a long time. They're both fucking massive, and for the last 5 years, they've been up there around the top 4. I've compared my club Richmond to Liverpool. Richmond second for fan base, Liverpool second for fan base. In terms of history, both have very rich histories, and Liverpool didn't win the Prem for so long, Richmond didn't win a flag for so long, and in 2017 Richmond win that drought-breaking flag, and in 2019-20 Liverpool win that Premier League. I compared St Kilda to Crystal Palace. Rich histories, but the reality is both teams always somehow finish mid-table. I've compared Sydney Swans to Brighton. Both teams don't have amazing history, and they aren't the most supported clubs in the world, but both are full of young talent, young stars, with a great style of play, and both Sydney and Brighton look to push towards top 5, so it makes sense. The Western Bulldogs, I've compared you to Leicester. Now Leicester are in the championship currently, but the simple reason is in 2016, the Doggies won the most remarkable flag out of nowhere, mirroring that of Leicester the year before in 2015 where they won the Prem out of nowhere. 5,000 to 1, fucking mental. And finally, the West Coast Eagles, I've compared you to Everton. Everton may have a much richer history, but recently speaking, both teams have struggled. West Coast getting wooden spoon after wooden spoon. Everton, after their points deduction, they might be relegated. Let me know in the comments who you would compare your AFL club to if it was a Premier League club, and stay tuned for more.